So there's a new update in Hypixel Skyblock, and it's a pretty interesting one. An update that was mainly on the alpha around about a week ago. Now, it all revolves around dice, as I'm sure most of you are probably already aware. Anyway, let's take a look at what's in this update. Now, first of all, as if you're going over to the Coliseum, take a left through this little opening, and you come to this house. And in this house is a new NPC called Vincent. Well, if you click on Vincent, you'll have quite a lengthy sort of dialogue to go through. But eventually he'll bring you to this menu where he will basically display 3 dice that have an increased chance of dropping this Skyblock year. And if we read a bit further, Vincents Masterpiece, every Skyblock year Vincent picks dies that he will use to paint a masterpiece. The 3 chosen dies will have the drop chances increased for the duration of the year. Not a real life year, just the Skyblock year. For example, the Carmine die. This die is 2 times as common during the Skyblock year 365, and we're in that year right now. The Copper die. This die is 3 times as common during the Skyblock year 365. And the Celestey die. This die is 2 times as common during the Skyblock year 365. And what's really cool is that at the bottom it shows you actually a counter of how many people have dropped it, and then underneath how many you've dropped. Honestly, it's really cool. It then shows you the exact drop rates as well. And of course, you might be looking at this copper die and thinking, oh well, I've never heard of a copper die. Well, it's new. There's quite a lot of new dice. Now, what would be interesting is to see how much a copper die is actually selling for at the moment. Considering there has been a few that have dropped. I'm not sure. Wait here, yeah, copper die, 420 mil. Now, there's lots of other dies that I've released that we're going to take a look at in just a moment and how to actually obtain them. But I think something else to think about is, you know, people liked the way that dies used to work. At the same time, I'd say a lot of people probably didn't. So I think we'll first have a look at the new dies and how to obtain them, maybe other changes in the update, and then we'll basically just talk about whether this is a good or a bad thing. But before we do, if you are planning on purchasing anything from the Hypixel store, make sure to use code NITROS. It gets yourself 5% off. You should subscribe to the channel. If you watch the videos and you haven't subscribed, please make sure to do so. You should join the Discord server. It's linked in the description of this video. We offer slates and dungeon carries, so if you need carries or want to carry and make some coins, make sure to join. Now, if you go to this menu at the bottom, the die compendium, it then basically shows you all the potential dies that you can get in the game. It then tells you the drop chance and basically also how you drop them. For instance, we have a new die like the Archfiend die. Drops from rolling a fancy dice, and then it shows you the chances of from a regular Archfiend dice and the high class. Of course, the copper die that we just took a look at drops from trading with visitors in the garden. Also, dung die, which is a 1 in 500k drop from vacuuming a pest on the garden. That's pretty cool. You can now obtain 2 extra dice from farming just from simply doing your visitors and your pests. Pretty cool. Fossil die, it's a 1 in 1 million drop from the fossil excavator. There's some dies that I'm just not sure if they're new or not, to be honest. It's something like the livid die, I'm pretty sure that's new. If you want to check out all of these new dies, you can simply just come over to this guy. This update is out on the main server now at the moment, so you can just come over and take a look. Like, you can even get a die from doing secrets in dungeons, which is kind of crazy. It does also show you all of the fire sale obtained dies. Now, from my understanding, I don't think there's a way that these could end up in the rotation for them to be an increased chance, because there is no chance of getting them because the fire sale's over. Now, something that we did skim over is the bucket of die. Increases your chance of dropping dies by 1%. Now, this is actually an accessory too, which is really cool. And the way you obtain the accessory is simply by donating a die of your choosing to Vincent. Now, some dies have had their chances amended too. Like the Nyanza die is no longer from sneaky creepers, it's now from mining commissions, which is really interesting. The Nadashiko die is no longer a very rare chance from fishing in the fairy pond. It's now a slightly more common chance to get from super purrs, which is really cool again. And the Cyclamen die, which was ridiculously rare, which was a ridiculously rare chance to drop from mushroom cows in the mushroom desert, is now changed to a slightly better chance from Crimson Isle mobs scaling with difficulty. And I guess the idea of all of these changes is to make these incredibly rare dies more accessible to people, have more of them come onto the market, and more people simply be able to afford them. Here is the list of all the new dies. Some of them I wasn't sure if they were new or not. Archfiend, Copper, Dung, Fossil, Frostbitten, Jade, Livid, Mocha, or Mocha, there's probably Mocha, Pearlescent, Pelt, Periwinkle, interesting, Secret, and then Sangria. This means that you can now obtain a die from Zombie Slayer, Runic Mobs, drops from Trapper Animals, drops from End Island Mobs, drops from brewing potions, and also from doing revs, which is really cool. Livid die from Bedrock chests in Master Mode Floor 5, very specific but pretty cool. Also drops from the Crystal Nucleus, a Jade die, frozen corpses, fossil excavators, pelts. Yeah, this is really cool. Other changes to dies, added a lobby-wide message that is sent out when a player drops a die. That's cool. Adjusted all dies to have the legendary rarity. Honestly, it's just all around good. As I was saying before, it seems like the main focus of this update is to basically make dies more accessible, and that is precisely basically what we have here in the designer notes. It is commonly known that many dies are extremely rare. To give some specific context, many dies have dropped less than 100 times over the last year, with some not even have dropped once. That kind of says it all. Now we also have quite a lot of other changes. For instance, a Peridot gemstone slot has been added to the Melon and Pumpkin dices. The gemstone slots on Dark Claymores have been changed from Jasper slots to combat slots. The Shadow Warp scroll / ability now displays the damage, the amount of damage it's projected to deal. I guess they're just minor changes. Quite a few dungeon changes too, such as the bomb diffuse being removed completely, which is, honestly, I can't really complain with that. Icefill being adjusted too as well. I mean, you can kind of just read these patch notes for yourself if you really want. Look how many miscellaneous changes there were. That is kind of crazy. And bug fixes, wow. Yeah, okay, there's fixes to everything. They've really been cooking. Anyway, I'll leave a link in the description to these patch notes, so if you want to check out all of these in more detail, then go ahead and do so. Now, to me, this update is nothing but good, because, well, realistically, there were a lot of dies that were way too rare. Pretty much unobtainable for majority of people, selling for billions and billions of coins, and if you want it to be a part of the game, it needs to be accessible. More people need to be able to actually access the content, so it makes sense that an update like this comes out. And sure, dies are still going to be incredibly rare. If you drop a die, you're still going to be very shocked, but it's just going to be slightly more common. Now, at the same time, there is a massive collectors community in Skyblock, and maybe potentially this update might be viewed as a bad thing to those people. Maybe their investments are going to go down in price, or maybe they like the fact, or people like the fact, that it's incredibly rare to get an item. But I think for the vast majority of people, we can pretty much all agree that this is just a good update in general. I mean, I've always thought, I'm not sure really about buying dies, because all of the nice dies are usually really expensive. And it's hard for a lot of people to justify spending hundreds of millions, maybe even billions, just buying maybe 3 or 4 pieces of armor. I mean, sure, it looks really cool, but it's just cosmetic. Hopefully, now I won't have to break the bank too much if I want to get some snazzy different colours on my armor. It'll probably still be expensive. But for instance, something like this Celestey die was always incredibly rare. Obtainable initially by killing the wolves over at the castle, but now it's dropped from killing Sven Packmaster. You could even potentially get one from killing a tier 1, obviously it's incredibly rare, but from killing tier 4s you have a 1 in 500k drop chance. Of course that's at the moment, because, well, there's double the chances, it's usually 1 in a million. So it's still going to be an incredibly rare die, but because really at the end of the day, not many people do Sven. Most people maybe just get to 7 so they can use the overflux, or just max it out and get to 9. There's a very small proportion of people who actually grind Sven over and over again, because, well, number 1, it's really incredibly boring, and number 2, there's better things to grind over and over again, whether that's for money or for XP. Of course, you're going to have a dedicated community of people who probably do grind it non-stop to try and get, you know, really high in the leaderboards. Well, there's still a very small proportion of people who grind Sven. So, yeah, to be honest, there's still a good chance of someone dropping that Celestey to you know, for them to actually be a relatively low-level person. So this update doesn't just make dice really easy to get. They're still going to be incredibly difficult and incredibly rare, just not quite as unobtainable. But anyway, at the end of the day, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and that's just my opinion, so you'll have to let me know what you think in the comments. Well, that's going to be the end of today's video. I hope you all have enjoyed. If you have, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.